first question is Pete Bryan. Pete Bryan, can you unmute and ask your question?
Yeah, my question is for Sarah Hildebrandt. This is coming from WSBT in South Bend. How you doing, Sarah?
It wasn't letting me unmute. Sorry. I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. So last time we spoke to you, I think was over the summer, shortly after we got news that the Olympics were getting pushed back for a year, which I know was disappointing to you because you were training your body to peak for last summer and you felt like you had a really good shot at making it. So I'm just curious, kind of, if you could tell me what the anticipation is like for you to be here now, a few weeks from the trials, potentially one good match away from fulfilling this Olympic dream.
Yeah. Gosh, it's been like, it feels like it took forever and it also feels like it flew by. So it's like a weird combination of that. But I made really great use of the year. My body's feeling really great. I feel just as prepared, if not more so than I did going in like last year. I think I've really figured out my weight cut now with my new descent down to 50. So really all positives, and I'm just freaking fired up to compete next weekend. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Okay. Let's Lara Hinojosa, you're next.
Hi, my name is Laura Leigh Hinojosa, and I'm with the women's wrestling brand, Super Wrestling, and I have a question for Sarah Hildebrandt. Considering this past year and after Olympics got canceled, you've actually had a great range of competition going into the Olympic team trials. You've secured the senior nationals title. You've been on a handful of wrestling cards. You've got an international tournament gold medal under your belt. Of course, the Captain's Cup. How do you feel right now meeting the competition in the Olympic team trials finals?
Yeah, I'm actually really happy with how much competition I was able to get in. This is about how much I would compete in a regular year leading into trials. So I don't feel off in terms of competing at all. And I love competition. That's where I feel like I thrive and where I feel my best. So going into Olympic trials, knowing I have multiple competitions under my belt is only a positive for me. And then, so just, I feel primed, I feel ready. I've hit weigh-ins multiple times. I've gotten those competition nerves out. It's not going to be my first time stepping on the mat, at trials. So just super grateful for things like Captain's Cup and the cards and senior nationals I was able to get to. And of course, just even getting overseas and getting my hands on people who aren't domestic. I feel like I've wrestled a wide range of wrestlers and I'm just prepared for anything and whoever comes out of the challenge tournament.
Kyle Klingman, you're up.
Kyle, you won the world championships at a non-Olympic weight, so that means you have a bye to the semifinals. Do you feel like that's equitable? And do you train different because you are in the semis?
I guess it's, depends on how many guys qualify for the weight. I think it's pretty equitable now just to have it as a 2-day tournament. Sarah gets to sit out. There's a handful of people that get to sit out, which is pretty awesome, as proven performers. So, I think that's smart on USA Wrestling's part. And then, just having that extra, that night of rest to kind of fully recover is something that's, I think, levels the playing field a lot. So, I think that's a good setup that we have now. And obviously having a bye to the semis is probably just one fewer match for me. But 2 matches on day 1 and then, best 2 out of 3 on day 2 is the plan right now. So I'm feeling good, ready to rock and roll.
Raise your hand or put something in the chat and I'll call on you. Okay, Mark Bader, Flow Wrestling.
Yeah, first one's for Sarah. Sarah, coming into this Olympic trials, you're the favorite, and it's probably the first time you've been a favorite in an Olympic trials. How does that feel? Does it change anything? Yeah.
No, it's definitely something that's crossed my mind, but I feel like I've gone into World Team Trials being the favorite, and I'm really not trying to look at this any differently or put any extra pressure like it's some greater event than something I've participated in before. At the end of the day, this is to make another world team, and I've done that multiple times. So I think just going in there and wrestling like how I wrestle, I don't have to wrestle more or be bigger or better than I actually am. So yeah, that's how I'm approaching that.
Stephen Craw.
Sarah, how you doing? Oh,
Good.
oh, good to see you. You mentioned competing and how you thrive on competition. We kind of know that about you. What's the difference between being in competition mode and training when you don't have anything right in front of you?
Yeah. I like competing because I feel like it's just a chance to, go out there, show everything I've been working on, let loose. Whereas training is very, it can get very nitpicky. It can get a little redundant. And so obviously when I'm in training mode, not right now, but when I'm in a long stretch of training without competing, there's a lot of things that I'm picking apart, and, it just can be pretty hard on anybody. So emotionally, physically. So obviously I just love when it's time to wrestle live, when it's time to go compete. And then with that, after competing, you just have so many areas that it just proves where it's working, where it's not working, that you can bring back to the practice room, have a little more direction, kind of freshen up maybe the redundancy of training, have new areas. So yeah, that's what I always love when it's time to compete, and getting ready for that.
So there's a mental grind when you're training and training and training, and then when you got competition, you just worry about the next match then.
Exactly. Just let loose, just a lion.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got some questions in the chat. Ryan Warner, can you turn on and ask yours, or would you like me to ask it for you? If you can turn on, go ahead.
I'm on if you guys can hear me. Great. Sarah, this one's for you. You're known as a real pro at managing your stress as a big event's approaching, but over the weekend you got to watch your brother Drew wrestle. Talk about some of the emotions of watching Drew at the NCAAs this past weekend.
Yeah, I was like, well, at least Olympic trials won't be that nerve-wracking. I was a mess last weekend, but in a really great way. It was actually perfect. All of his matches were right when my practice was starting. So, I didn't even have to warm up. I could just watch Drew wrestle, and then it was like super fired up, heart rate flying. I could just step on the mat and go do my training. But yeah, no, it's super great watching him, and it just got me so excited, so fired up. Obviously, he inspires me so much. So I think it's really special that I get to kind of watch him, and, we're communicating through that whole event. And then now I'm going into mine, and he's, now it's flipped. I'm going into my competition. I'm sure he's the nervous one, but we have those communications open, and it's just a really cool thing to share with him.
So Ryan, you had a follow-up question for Kyle, I believe.
Yep, kind of along the same veins. Kyle, your rivalry with JB started back in 2013, almost 8 years ago. Now you guys are likely going to be wrestling for the spot, but now you're doing so as a father. So I just want to get your thoughts. How has having two kids changed your perspective on training and competition?
I'm learning how to find little pockets to relax and sleep. Whereas before I could just take my long stretch, get my 9-10 hours and then wake up and train. But, obviously having two babies, a 2-year-old and a 5-month-old, it changes things a little bit. But I think a lot of it has been for the better, coming home and being able to unwind with them and, just see their smiling faces and, having those two little girls to come home to is something pretty special. And, I'm always thankful to be able to come home to a family like that.
Okay, Nick Karski, ESPN Ithaca, please.
Yeah, this is a question for Kyle. Nick Karski, ESPN Ithaca. Great to see you, man. Curious how you've used this extra time and this layoff to prepare for the trials. I remember when we chatted about a year ago, obviously the world was in chaos and everything like that. So how have you prepared and have played the waiting game during this time?
Yeah, it's been, obviously I had a kid. So that kind of shifted my focus a little bit. And, just the timing of everything, the way it worked out, obviously we were all prepared to go to battle and to put it all on the line to make a team in last April. But with the news of the Olympics and moving everything back, we're all pretty familiar with that, and understanding that what you were doing, how you prepared for that April event last year is pretty much not relevant anymore. And you have a whole nother year that you got to prepare and reassess where you're at. And for me, it was great. Every year that I get, I feel like I get a little bit better. And, whether it be adding new technique or, just sharpening up certain things, changing certain aspects of your style, making, biomechanical changes or whatever it might be, having more time for me is pretty important, just because it allows me to unravel things that I didn't realize before. So I feel great from a physical standpoint, from a wrestling standpoint. I feel best I've ever felt, and I'm just ready to go out and compete. And I feel like I'm in a really good headspace as well. So 10 days, well, whatever it is, 10 days away from now, we'll be rocking and rolling.
Tim Creason from the South Bend Tribune.
Yeah, I think Kyle just answered my question, but there's such an emotional and physical buildup in an election year, an Olympic year. You have to get yourself trained both physically and emotionally to deal with that. And then all of a sudden, you're put on a 1-year hold. How do you deal with that? Do you bring yourself down and take a break for 6 months? And this is for both Kyle and Sarah. Do you try to take a break and then start the build-up process all over again? How do you deal with a 1-year build-up back to the same thing you were working for a year earlier?
Sarah, you go ahead.
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I for sure came down. It's just unrealistic to maintain that for a year. It's not good for your body, mind, at least for me. It was really difficult because obviously year before the Olympics, being told to just full on stop or slow down when you were just moving forward with the Olympics in sight is a very huge shift, a big turnaround. But I definitely worked into coming down a little, letting myself put on some weight, letting my body recover. There's really a lot to be gained in just recovery with having all that time, and knowing that I would have time to come back up again and train to where I need to be and get better and do it better because my body's feeling better, my mind's feeling more relaxed, everything feels, you're coming to it a lot more refreshed. And that was important to me, to avoid that burnout when there was no reason to just train like a madman, all summer. There's things I could do to make great leaps and more benefits and add to my wrestling, but it didn't need to be taxing in any way. And when the time came to turn it up, that's what I was doing. So definitely took a little chill pill for a little bit in the summer and then started working my way back up. So I'm ready to go now.
Anything on that, Kyle?
Yeah, for me, typically, my years are broken down between like 6 and 10 week schedules. So, that's my training period. So I was at the end of my training period leading into, the Olympic team trials. And right after the Olympic team trials, I always take, or, whatever major tournament is at the end of that, 6 or 10 weeks, I'll take about a week off the mat and just chill out and recover. Obviously not being able to go anywhere with the pandemic, not being able to travel that far, and everyone, there were so many unknowns. People didn't know what was going on. People didn't know how to, how it would impact you, how it would impact my kids, how it would impact my wife and myself and, my grandparents. And, now we have a lot more knowledge of what that looks like. And so we can, keep taking those 10-week steps or 6-week steps to assess your training. So I did take a little bit of time right after and, just put my feet up and relaxed. And, we had right around that time, we had just found out that we were going to have a baby. So we were kind of on, we were pretty sad that it happened in the state of affairs of the world, but we were also pretty happy because we were able to bring in new life to this world. And, so that's kind of how I viewed it. And, I just got back on the horse and was like, I can still make improvements and I'm going to continue to do so. And, nothing really changed for me. I still had, competitions and I was able to, compete a handful of times leading up to it. And, but yeah, that's pretty much how I handled it.
Okay, Jason Knapp, NBC.
Hey, Kyle, the disappointment of getting ready to try to make it to Rio and coming down now 5 years later, how do you feel you're better prepared for this situation than maybe you were 5 years ago?
I think a big difference is just maturity level. I was able to, I became a father. I keep harping on that, but it really is a huge change. And then, also I made some changes to the way I approach the sport and the way I approach my cross training. What are my priorities? What do I put, what do I put through my priority filter? And what do I want to accomplish? What am I trying to do? Am I trying to be, the best wrestler that I can possibly be? Okay, what does that mean? Really break it down and figure out where I can improve, where I will need to pull back. And those are things that I kind of talked about ad nauseum since 2016. But I feel like I'm in a much better space physically, mentally. It's just there's nothing for me to look at now. It's just go out and let it fly. I can't change anything. My training is my training. I can't go back in time and be like, oh man, I should have done this and this. There's even if I could, I don't think I'd go back and change anything.
Derek Levendusky, American Women's Wrestling.
This is for Sarah. Sarah, you always hear elite wrestlers talk about having stuff to work on after competing. And I know you were part of the King University program, and I was just talking to them after the NCAA event, and they were saying losses are feedback. So I know it was a while ago, but I'm just curious, what were your takeaways from 2019 Worlds, as you kind of got into the Olympic year, and what were some of the things that you really focused on in your preparation?
Yeah, mostly what I got back from 2019 was a lot of mental stuff and how I felt like I was approaching the sport mentally. And obviously every time you wrestle, you're getting feedback in terms, win or lose, regardless, you're getting feedback if you're open to it. But there's just so many things in terms of how I was approaching the sport, my training. I was trying to control so much and be a perfectionist and put all these expectations on myself. And I was really suffocating myself. And I feel like 2019 Worlds was just a culmination of all of that. And it just blew up in my face. And it really, really forced myself to just reflect on that. When I had my elbow injury, it forced me to reflect on a lot of physical things I was doing. And when I lost at World Championships, it really forced me to reflect on a lot of mental things. So I think that was the biggest takeaway. And I really dove into that side of it and sports psychology of, for myself and all of that. And that has really set me on a much better track than I think physically anything ever could. Techniques and all of that. Obviously that's always great. And I'm always open to those feedbacks, but everything that I took away mentally from that tournament has really changed me as a wrestler and as a person.
The Jack Hurley, the fight site.
Muted, buddy.
You need to unmute, Jack.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, question for Kyle. So you're kind of known as one of the top, top position wrestlers in this country, at least on the freestyle side. What did you do with your training or your, kind of technique or whatever to get yourself to that point as being so good with your gut wrench?
Oh, geez. I don't know that I addressed anything specifically. I spent a lot of time in 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, all the way through working on my gut wrench. And I've always just been a fairly good top wrestler, both in collegiate and freestyle. I've spent a lot of time, whether it be on transitions or whether it be just touch and go. Also, I attribute a lot of it to a lot of my Greco wrestling from my younger years. You had to have a really good gut wrench if you want to be good at wrestling, because you can hit leg laces. And So I feel like I just spent a lot of time there, and I had some really good coaches growing up. They really were able to help me perfect, a lot of little things, where your lock is, your shoulder placement, where your feet are, the timing of certain things, the sequencing of certain things. So those are all aspects that I had inherently, and then recently figured out what I was actually doing and understanding why I did what I did. And that played a pretty big role in it too.
Got a follow-up from Lara Hinojosa.
I have another question for Sarah. Team USA has secured 6 of the 6 women's freestyle Olympic weight classes, which is a first for American women's wrestling. It's amazing. What does that mean to you that USA Wrestling will be showing a full range of competition at Olympic team trials and also will be taking a full squad to Tokyo?
Yeah, so freaking cool. It was so exciting to be a part of that qualification procedure, but more so I'm just so excited because the team we can bring to Tokyo is the team that can win. And I really truly believe that. And I know that the women on this team really truly believe that, and the things that we're doing speak to that. I've been on national teams for a really long time and with lots of people, and everybody obviously is always working hard, but you can just feel the difference, the energy, and the practice room when we're all together, how everybody's leading their lives. We believe it, our coaches believe it. So it's just exciting that, going into Tokyo, we are going to be in that team race. We're sending our whole squad, and it's just super cool. And it will be obviously really amazing to dethrone Japan in Japan. And I believe that we have the women who can do it.
So Sarah and Kyle, we're not backed up with another set of interviews. The next one we're doing is at 2 Central. Do you guys mind hanging a couple more minutes? Because we do have a few more questions. I'd love to be able to get the journalists their questions if you guys can hang a little bit more.
Yeah,
that's fine.
Okay. So Cody Goodwin, Des Moines Register.
This is for Sarah. We've talked a lot, I guess, over the last 4 years, just about the overall growth of girls and women's wrestling across the country at all levels. And you mentioned just taking 6 to Tokyo and just the team and the overall talent that'll be out there on the mats. Have you guys thought about the impact or the opportunity for an even deeper impact? I mean, I know Helen won in 2016, but just the opportunity you guys have when you go out there to compete, what it can do on the continued growth of the sport here in the States?
Yeah, I mean, women's wrestling is just freaking taking off. And I only think we can add to that. And I think all of us carry ourselves with that in mind. We're very aware that the steps and us chasing our dreams is creating a bigger platform for the women coming up, behind us. And that's a super cool thing. And that's something that really can fire you up, right? Like going out there knowing that this is planting a seed for this to grow even bigger for somebody, after you. And it puts a lot of purpose in what we're doing. And that's a super important thing when you're chasing a dream like this, and to have that extra purpose and know that it is growing a sport and for, providing more for the women to come. It's just really, really cool. And I think, we get this team out there, we do as well as I think we will. It'll just add to women's wrestling here in the States even more. And, we're seeing stuff starting to pop up, and hopefully these D1 programs are starting to take off, and it just continue. It's just an awesome domino effect that I truly, truly think will explode even more after games this summer.
Mark Bader, you had a follow up.
I had one for Kyle. Kyle, probably the top 3 are you, Jordan, and Isaiah Martinez. You wrestled both those guys in 2017 at the trials. One, have you had an opportunity to wrestle with either of those guys since then? I would guess at camp. I don't think you've competed against either of them. And 2, given the back and forth you had with Jordan 10 or 11 months ago on FRL, is it a personal thing at all with you and him? And from your point of view, obviously.
I got a chance to wrestle with Isaiah. He's my training partner in 2018. I was supposed to bring another guy, and he couldn't come. So Isaiah stepped up and really helped me out there in 2018, which was pretty awesome. And then 2018, Jordan and I think we wrestled one other practice, maybe two. But since then it's been, we haven't trained at all really. But yeah, there was a lot of pent up emotion going into the Olympic team trials, and things were said and water under the bridge in my book, and I'm just ready to go out and compete again. Really, that's bottom line. And try not to take anything too personally, because this is what we do. This is our business. This is what we're trying to play those mind games. We're trying to play the battle within the battle. And there's certain times where you just gotta put it all aside, step up, and go out and compete.
Lara Hinojosa, you have one more follow-up?
Yes, one last question again for Sarah. So the competition at 50 kilos is pretty stout. You have Victoria Anthony coming out, Whitney Condor, Alyssa Lampy is back, just to name a few senior wrestlers, and of course all the up-and-coming college wrestlers, those that qualified last year and this year at NCAAs and NAIAs. As the Olympic team trials challenge tournament plays out, who do you have your eyes on? Which wrestlers are on your radar?
You're right. The weight class is stacked, so it's really been hard to pinpoint who I think is going to come through, especially because that way, everybody's beaten it's just a mess. Like seeding it is crazy. People who have beaten others have lost to the people who beat them. And so I really am not expecting, I think that's a bad idea to set an expectation on any of that. And I just preparing for literally everyone, and really focusing on myself. And that's the nice thing about this 2-day tournament is I'll know going to bed that night who I will have. So then I can eventually pour in that extra energy that I need into that specific person. But right now, I'm just preparing for everybody. It really could be anybody. So yeah, it'll be interesting. I'm excited.
Tim Creason, we do have time for one last question. So go for it.
Sarah, it's 2008. You're at Elkhart Memorial High School. You're a little high school sophomore. You walk out to the mat and a bunch of boys start laughing at the very thought of you being out there. 2 hours later, you're 5-0, and all those boys are sitting there with their mouths on the ground, scared to death of you. Did you imagine when you were a high school sophomore that you would someday become like a spokesman for this sport? You would become like a worldwide face. You've taken it from scaring a bunch of kids in South Bend, Indiana, to being like one of the top wrestlers in the world. Has that thought crossed your mind?
Well, it's funny. I've journaled my whole life, like even before I knew how to punctuate sentences. But and I was reading an old journal before I was even an athlete, and I was talking about how I wanted to be an Olympian. And so I guess I've had this dream for a really long time. And I do remember when I started wrestling, I'm like, oh, I could go to the Olympics. But I never, could have dreamed up how this has played out and just the amazing opportunities that have presented themselves. And, it's been really cool and special. And gosh, yeah, from wrestling with the boys to how, crazy and up and down that was to where I am now. It's been just such an insane journey. It's been, to credit those boys, they all message me like these days and they're all like, we're pulling for you. So it's gone from, we were competitors, 103 pounds to, the whole state of Indiana really so supportive. So it's been cool.
So Derek Levendusky, as a New Yorker, I'm going to request your last question for another New Yorker.
Well, that's exactly the nature of my question. A fellow New Yorker here, Kyle. What's going on down there at Cornell and the Spartan RTC? I mean, you guys have put New York wrestling on the map, I think, in a way maybe it's never been before. Can you just talk about what that means to you to be part of that, Cornell program and the Spartan RTC, and to be surrounded by those guys, not only in training, but, the friendships you have there and that, that whole support system moving forward with your career?
Yeah, I'm born and raised here, so Cornell wrestling has been a part of my life for a really long time, and you know, being able to go out and compete and train, you know, for Cornell and for my community has always been special to me. You know, now that we're Spartan Combat RTC, it's, you know, it's pretty cool, you know, bringing Gabe back out of retirement, you know, having Yanni and Vito, you know, and a handful of other guys. We're sending a nice little crew down to Last Chance this weekend. So hopefully we can get a few more guys qualified. But, you know, having a full team is something pretty special, and it's unique to a lot of places. There's not very many RTCs that have a full team that can, you know, say like, well, we have chances to put multiple guys on an Olympic team. So, you know, having that high level of wrestling in one area is pretty awesome. Mostly because it just makes you better, and, you know, you're constantly looking at new things, different angles of, you know, certain situations and different perspectives, and, you know, trying to communicate those things amongst us, and you know, really pushing each other to get better has been, you know, a huge asset to both the Cornell Wrestling program and the Spartan RTC.
Well, we're going to wrap this up, but I first of all want to thank both Kyle and Sarah for finding the time to share with our journalists here, and I want to wish them the best of. It's never luck, right? But to have a great performance in Texas in 2 weeks,